The preceding program was brought to you in time, made available for government broadcasts.
NewsTalk 93 FM. Heard everywhere.
Anytime is Bashko time at the store that gives you more. The time by Bashko is
5 o'clock.
5.
Make sure that CCN clip ready. We need it for the second.
4.
Facts from the Clarendon correspondent coming through now.
3.
All the international stories in the folder. Go to
2.
Newsreaders all set.
Yeah, man, everything set, everything ready.
1.
From the grill to Morant Point, NewsTalk 93 FM has got it covered. Across the 7 seas to the 4 corners of the world, it's all captured on the 93 radar. 93.1, 93.3, 93.5, 93.7, and 93.9 on your FM dial. Real News at 5 starts now.
Good afternoon. Time for the 5 o'clock news roundup here on NewsTalk 93 FM. I'm Errol Lee.
And I'm Andre Bernard.
Coming up in this newscast, National Security Minister Peter Bunting says the Jamaica Constabulary Force is to establish a permanent location in Western Jamaica.
Deputy Opposition Spokesperson on Finance, Favour Williams, says the Jamaican dollar is a moving target.
British High Commission backtracks on its no request for interviews from local media.
And road fatalities continue to trend upward. Motorcyclists are still among the most killed.
Now the details. National Security Minister Peter Bunting says the Jamaica Constabulary Force is to establish a permanent location in Western Jamaica to respond to the rising incidence of gun-related crimes in the parishes of Hanover, Westmoreland, and St. James. According to Bunting, the periodic engagement of mobile reserve cops in the West is not sufficient. Bunting, who was speaking at a consultation on crime in Lucy yesterday, said in the meantime, some members of the mobile reserve will be based at the Falmouth police station, which can accommodate around 200 policemen. He said given the kinds of weapons some criminals possess, only highly trained cops can be deployed to engage them.
Meanwhile, Bunting is expressing concern that electors' identification information from the Electoral Office of Jamaica's database still cannot be used in criminal investigations by the Jamaica Constabulary Force. According to the Security Minister, the voter's ID captures the photographs and fingerprints of 95% of Jamaican adults. However, he says the information cannot be used in law enforcement to solve crime. He says the issue calls for a debate in Parliament. Bunting says he hopes the opposition will support a move to change the existing legislation. According to the National Security Minister, the database will help with identifying information of wanted men.
Residents are making an appeal for police to increase their presence in sections of Molynes Road, especially around the Tarrant High School. The residents claim that in recent months the area where the school is located has been overrun by criminals. According to one school official, criminals have now taken over the area, and students at the school are now being attacked on a regular basis, and as a result, the official is calling out for help. The school official said in the past 2 days, criminals have carried out at least 3 attacks against students at the Tarrant High School. The latest took place yesterday when a student was held up at knife point and her telephone stolen. A day later, the source reported that criminals opened fire in the vicinity of the school.
Member of Parliament for West St. Thomas, James Robertson, has come out against recent media reports which he says have caused panic among residents in his constituency. Addressing a specially convened press conference to discuss the hand, foot and mouth disease affecting schools across the island this morning, Robertson made reference to what he said was a false report carried in both of the country's national papers relating to the disease in other countries.
The pressure that I am now coming under when families are reading with their children suffering from this. They're not even going, they're going to other people, councillors, MPs, probably pastors, with this now false information. The countries that carried this were, and I want to say deaths from foot and mouth, and the number, are now denying it. And these are our checks. How did this get into both papers and what is happening? Are we working together? What is it? I don't want to move from that, and I'm not saying it's anybody in here's fault, but it has created a crisis out there.
Robertson has also blasted what he says are unfounded reports of hand, foot and mouth disease across the island.
How are we dealing with false reports or no clinical reports now of a new virus? Because I battled through chickpea in St. Thomas. That was real. But how are we now reporting a new one which no clinic or nobody has tested, no lab has tested? That's another one that's creating a problem. And I'm not here to speak or to admonish anybody, but those are two things that are making this a lot more difficult to face. The last one I want to highlight.
Robertson also expressed concern with what he says are reports relating to the availability of water in his constituency.
The National Water Commission and the Ministry of Education has possibly put in reports in terms of what schools are suffering from lack of water that are not accurate. Because when I met earlier this week with the National Water Commission, their records are showing that I have absolutely no schools in West St. Thomas that are without proper water supply, and that is not correct. And that I find those three areas where false information is in the public domain is what is causing more stress.
Member of Parliament for West St. Thomas, James Robertson.
Meanwhile, Deputy Opposition Spokesperson on Finance, Favour Williams, says the Jamaican dollar is a moving target. She says this against the background of the consistent depreciation of the local currency.
On an annual basis, things are okay. The currency depreciates anywhere between 3 to 5% per year. There's never an end to it. At best, the Bank of Jamaica can try to moderate that, annual depreciation, but there's no end to it. And I'm sure you've heard the governor talk already about the currency. When he was at 100, he said, it's competitive here. Here we are at 120. He'll probably say it's competitive here. At 130, he'll probably say it's competitive there. So it's a moving target.
Williams says in light of conditions laid down by the IMF, swift action is needed to stabilize the dollar.
Well, I think it might have been precipitated by the most recent IMF report in which they indicated that some depreciation that needs to happen. And of course, when business people and other people hear that, they take action, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think that's probably what's going on.
Favour Williams. Meanwhile, Chief Executive Officer of Corporate Strategies, Orbin Hill, explains the conditional ties set down by the IMF to the ordinary person in terms of what actions will have to be taken by the government.
Basically what it means for the ordinary person is that the government is going to cut spending, not just for roads and hospitals, big capital spending, but for things that sometimes maybe even salaries, because they're 10.1% of the GDP figure for salaries, where it should be 9. So you're going to see a constant cutting of most normal things, everything that the government usually does to look after the welfare of people, not just building main infrastructure, long-term infrastructure, but everyday ordinary things.
Hill says Finance Minister Dr. Peter Phillips' negotiations with the IMF regarding the large oversight of the primary surplus negotiated for the IMF does not know what it would actually mean.
You're going to see more cuts of those things that people use. In other words, that Herculean oversized primary surplus figure that the minister negotiated and probably didn't quite understand what it would mean on the ground. He is now learning what it means to feed that dragon, that insatiable appetite, pay back the debts that he has negotiated to pay back in that fashion. So that's what it means.
Orbin Hill, Chief Executive Officer of Corporate Strategies. Hill and Williams were speaking on the evening edition last night.
A senior tax collector from Tax Administration Jamaica, TAJ, was sentenced to 9 months in prison after he was found guilty of obtaining money by means of false pretense. Denford Edwards was sentenced this week when he appeared in the Halfway Tree Resident Magistrates Court. Reports are that Edwards collected a sum of money from a taxpayer on the premise that he was in a position to remove a 3-year restriction off the title of a 2005 BMW X5 without the authority to do so. He was subsequently arrested and charged in January 2014. The resident magistrate, in handing down the sentence, said that persons in the government service must be held to high standards as they have the trust of the people of the country.
The government of Jamaica and the World Bank today signed an agreement for grant funding of $6.8 million to help Jamaica boost its resilience to climate change. Among other things, the money will be used to gather data on the impact of climate change in Jamaica, as well as ways to enhance the country's response capabilities. The agreement falls under the Ministry of Water, Land, Environment and Climate Change and will be implemented by the Planning Institute of Jamaica. The Improving Climate Data and Information Management Project will look at capturing data on areas such as rainfall, land, surface temperature, and sea levels, among other things.
The National Water Commission, NWC, has further extended its debt write-off amnesty for delinquent customers. The new deadline is Friday, October 9. Under the extension, customers with account balances of more than 180 days overdue can benefit from a debt write-off of 60%. The NWC says the initiative is aimed at active and disconnected water accounts, as well as illegally connected water consumers. The agency says customers are encouraged to take advantage of the opportunity to clear all arrears and bring their accounts up to date. It says those who fail to remedy their account will be subjected to revenue recovery activities such as court action, disconnection, or prosecution.
You're listening to news on NewsTalk 93 FM. It's 11.5 after 5. The British High Commission has backtracked on statements it made earlier about local media interviews being excluded from Britain's and Jamaica's prime ministers following their bilateral talks on Tuesday. The High Commission is now saying it had requested that no questions be allowed from the media for the visit of Prime Minister David Cameron. Yesterday, the High Commissioner, David Fitton, said it was not his idea that media interviews be excluded after David Cameron and Prime Minister Portia Simpson-Miller presented statements following bilateral talks at Jamaica House on Tuesday. The move prompted a swift reaction from the Office of the Prime Minister, maintaining that it was Britain's idea that no questions be allowed. But in a statement today, the High Commission backtracked on its earlier claim. The High Commission explains that the demands and short length of the program meant that there was no time to facilitate questions following the bilateral statements. It further states that it had therefore requested there be no questions because of the time constraints. However, the spokesperson noted that after further review of Cameron's schedule, the Commission created a small window to accommodate media interviews on Wednesday morning at Heroes Park.
Meanwhile, the Press Association of Jamaica, the PAJ, is reiterating calls for local journalists to be given greater access to visiting heads of government. There are conflicting reports as to why Jamaican journalists were initially prohibited from asking questions of British Prime Minister David Cameron earlier this week. The PAJ did not take a public position on this situation. However, it said it was pleased that both offices appear to have recognized that the lack of access was an issue.
Meanwhile, the PAJ is noting that Jamaica House has taken what it describes as the disgraceful position of restricting media access to Prime Minister Portia Simpson-Miller. It notes that Simpson-Miller has given very few in-depth interviews during her term in office, which would allow individual journalists to adequately probe her ideas and policies. It says the Prime Minister has, for over 2 years, refused to hold any press conferences for the wider press corps. The PAJ says the Prime Minister's steadfast refusal to face the media is unprecedented in modern times and is contemptuous of and dismissive of the Jamaican press to an unbelievable degree. As a result, it is urging Jamaica House to begin to pay the local press the respect it deserves and to immediately begin to schedule regular press conferences with the Prime Minister for the benefit of the public.
267 people have died in road crashes since the start of the year. According to statistics from the National Road Safety Council, the NRSC, there has been an increase in the number of road fatalities from January 1 to September 30 when compared to the same period in 2013 and 2014. These statistics indicate that motorcyclists and pillion passengers have accounted for 89 deaths, while occupants of private motor cars recorded 39 fatalities for the period. 65 pedestrians have been road crash victims, while deaths of occupants traveling in public passenger vehicles now stand at 9. Among the 267 recorded road fatalities, there were also 14 pedal cyclists. At the same time, 14 children have died on the Jamaican roads to date. In news from the region, An extremely dangerous Hurricane Joaquin was battering central Bahamas today, with winds of 130 miles per hour as it inches slowly towards the northwest. The Miami-based National Hurricane Center says the storm is located about 20 miles northeast of Clarence, Long Island, the Bahamas, and is drifting toward the northwest near 3 miles per hour. A faster northward motion is expected to begin later today, followed by a turn toward the northeast and an increase in forward speed tonight and tomorrow.
That's your local and regional news. For international news, we join the BBC.
BBC News with Nick Kelly. President Obama has described Russian airstrikes in Syria as a recipe for disaster, which will only strengthen Islamic State militants. He said it was clear from his talks earlier this week with Vladimir Putin that the Russian leader did not distinguish between IS and moderate opposition forces. Russia says it's carried out 18 airstrikes in Syria since Thursday evening in support of President Bashar al-Assad. Earlier, President Putin held talks in Paris with the leaders of France and Germany. A French diplomat said they discussed the airstrikes on Syria by both Russia and the US-led coalition and how to bridge differences over their attitude towards President Assad. The Brazilian president, Dilma Rousseff, has announced a big cabinet reshuffle, the axing of 8 government ministries and thousands of job cuts. The move is designed to tackle Brazil's economic problems and corruption scandals. U.S. officials say the gunman who killed 9 people at a college in Oregon had at least 13 legally held weapons. It's also emerged that the gunman, who was himself shot dead, did some basic training in the U.S. Army 7 years ago but was discharged. Within the past few minutes, police have held a news conference to give the names of the victims. And family members of Nigeria's former oil minister, Diozani Alison Madueke, say she's been arrested in London. Their confirmation came after the British National Crime Agency said it had arrested 5 people as part of an investigation into suspected bribery and money laundering offences. She has previously denied any wrongdoing. BBC News.
Broadcast Jamaican and NewsTalk 93 FM now gear the news in the Jamaican language.
Good evening. My name is Kadeen Marshall, and this are the news in the Jamaican language. The opposition said the government took too long to deal with the hand, foot, and mouth disease was spread to more than 50 schools quick. According to Senator Marlene Malawu Fort, where the opposition spokesperson on health, caused the disease spread so quick, it caused one threat to the health and education sector, just like what chikungunya do last year. She began attack at one press conference at the Jamaica Labour Party headquarters at Belmont Road yesterday. Peter Bunting, where the Minister for National Security, said the information off of the Electoral Office Jamaica database can't use in a criminal case by the Jamaica Constabulary Force. According to Bunting, the voters' ID have the picture and fingerprint for 95% of the people in the country. But the information can't use for solve no crime right now. Him said they were going to talk about it in a parliament. Him said him hope the opposition support the government for change the law. The Press Association for Jamaica, PAJ, makes some more talk today about how them never really get for chat to the Prime Minister for Britain, David Cameron, when him been there. This morning, the British High Commission said that them never mean for lock out the press when the Prime Minister been in the country. The PAJ said them God for know said the British High Commission and the Office for the Prime Minister, OPM, say it a one problem said the media could chat to the Prime Minister. But the PAJ feels said the way the OPM forced them to ask the question them, never right. News from the rest of the Caribbean. The Opposition United Progressive Party, UPP, in Antigua and Barbuda, said them support the change that would have cut down on the time of people outside of the country after spending in the country before them can vote in the general election. This come after the ruling Antigua Barbuda Labour Party, ABLP, said Cabinet agreed to change the law from 1 month to 2 weeks. Him said them talk with people from Antigua who live outside of the country and it not fair to them, so the changes are going to make it easier for them vote in the general election. News from foreign. Russia dropped some more bomb on the rebel fighter them who fight against the Syrian president Bashar al-Assad. According to Moscow, them drop some bomb on some place where the IS fighter them group up Thursday. Them drop some bomb in a place like Raqqa, Aleppo, Hama, Idlib, but some report as a little of the IS fighter them been in a them city there. America, UK and Turkey and some other country been say Russia must stop drop the bomb them cause innocent people are dead too and them gonna make the war worse. Me name Kadeen Marshall and that are the news in the Jamaican language.
Broadcast Jamaican and NewsTalk 93 FM just give the news in the Jamaican language.
The 5 o'clock Sports Roundup is brought to you by NewsTalk 93 FM, life-changing radio.
Good afternoon. With your 5 o'clock Sports Roundup here on NewsTalk 93 FM, I am Mikhail Drama Johns, and we begin with football. On the local scene, the 2014-2015 Sherwin-Williams Women's League will begin on Sunday with 5 matches. Among those will be a Barbican Sports Complex doubleheader, and in that mix will be home side and league and knockout defending champions Barbican FC, who are set to face by 10 teams. Meanwhile, this season's Sherwin-Williams Women's League will be contested by 10 teams. Women's League will be contested by 10 teams, playing each other once, either at home or away. At league's end, the top 2 teams will contest a one-way final. And come tomorrow, the Jamaica Football Federation JFF will host a grassroots festival for girls. Under the FIFA Live Your Goals campaign, it will be held in Mandeville, Manchester. 100 girls aged 6 to 12 from the South Central and Western Confederations will be hosted at Brooks Park in the parish. The festival is one of the JFF's major objectives in its women's development program, which is the introduction of the game to girls at an early age. Further afield, 2 of the English Premier League EPL's top 3 will head into action tomorrow as a second-place Manchester City face lowly Newcastle, and West Ham, who are third, travel to bottom dwellers Sunderland. Also on tomorrow, title holders Chelsea, currently 14th, face 10th place Southampton. As for Sunday's games, leaders Manchester United challenge 4th place Arsenal, and Everton in 5th play Liverpool. Man U lead the tables with 16 points, 1 over City, while West Ham and Arsenal have 13 each, and Everton 12. Still on football, sponsors of FIFA have weighed in on the matter of Sepp Blatter's presidency. Among the companies which have called for his resignation are drinks company Coca-Cola and fast food chain McDonald's. Despite the added pressure, Blatter says he will not resign despite the comments from the major stakeholders. Rotherham United fell 2-1 to Burnley today in Championship Cup action. Rotherham cancelled Burnley's 9th minute opener in the 75th, but Burnley rallied back 6 minutes later with the winner. The win sees Burnley provisionally third in the tables, as today's pair were the first teams to contest their 10th fixture this season. According to ex-Blues Dr. Eva Carneiro, at no stage was she asked to testify by the Football Association FA over alleged derogatory remarks by Jose Mourinho. The FA cleared Blues boss Mourinho after studying footage when he criticized Carneiro and head physio John Fearn. However, FA boss Greg Dyke has said Mourinho should have apologized. And moving on to track and field, the Jamaica Athletics Administrative Association J3As is defending its assigning 19 officials to the 53-member senior team to the recent World Championships. The association came under fire as the support staff was thought to be too large. Meanwhile, questions were tabled as to the role and function of some of the individuals and the costs involved. However, J3's communication officer Dennis Gordon used the United States pool of 103 officials to 132 athletes as a case in point to justify his association's move. Now for a look at cricket. South Africa today won their first 2020 T20 International versus India, handing the hosts a 7-wicket defeat. The Proteas won the toss and elected to open in the field. That saw them allowing India 199 runs while taking 5 wickets in the allotted 20 overs. They then took to the crease, making their 200-run target with 2 balls to spare at the expense of 3 wickets. Despite the loss for India, Rohit Sharma hit a match-high century of 106. The South Africans' best was Jean-Paul Dumini with an unbeaten 68. And finally, in tennis, Venus Williams today beat Roberta Vinci to reach the Wuhan Open final. Vinci, who saw off Venus's sister Serena at the US Open and ended her hopes of completing a calendar Grand Slam, fell 5-7, 6-2, 7-6. Venus goes on to face Spain's Garbiñe Muguruza in the final over the weekend. And that's it for the 5 o'clock sports roundup here on NewsTalk 93 FM. I am Mikhail Drama John saying stay tuned as we bring to you the business news and weather report.
The 5 o'clock sports roundup was brought to you by NewsTalk 93 FM, life-changing sports radio.
At 5:26, time for business news. On the local stock market today, the index declined by 1,349.88 to close at 96,619.75. The junior market index advanced by 31.29 to close at 1,017.38. Market activity resulted from trading in 21 stocks. 9 advanced, 7 declined, and 5 traded firm. Market volume amounted to 974,551 units, valued at $16.9 million. NCB was today's volume leader. Stocks advancing: Carib Cement, Siboney, D&G, Grace, Hardware and Lumber, JMMB Group, Kingston Properties, Kingston Wharves, and Proven Investments 8%. Stocks declining: Producers Group, Mayberry, NCB, Panjam Investments, Sagicor, Scotia Group, and Scotia Investments. And on the foreign exchange market, the U.S. dollar closed the trading week at $118.82, the pound $182.71, the Canadian $88.80, and the euro $132.29. That's business news.
And now for a look at the weather. There is a trough induced by Hurricane Joaquin over Jamaica. The trough remains over the Caribbean through to tomorrow. In the forecast for tonight, conditions will be partly cloudy with isolated showers over western parishes.
To end the news, the main points. National Security Minister Peter Bunting says the Jamaica Constabulary Force is to establish a permanent location in western Jamaica.
Deputy Opposition Spokesperson on Finance, Favour Williams, says the Jamaican dollar is a moving target.
British High Commission backtracks on its no request for interviews statement from local media.
And road fatalities continue upward trend as motorcyclists are still among the most killed.
That's your 5 o'clock news package right here on NewsTalk 93 FM. I'm Errol Lee.
And I'm Andre Bernard.
The evening edition is next.